Dustin, good to see you. Happy Rothtober. Today's topic is a great one. We're talking through 3 considerations before making a Roth conversion. Roth accounts are an amazing tool when it comes to creating wealth. Roth IRAs are not subject to probate and they can pass onto your heirs tax-free. So if you're debating a Roth conversion, there are a few things to consider first. And number 1 is your future tax rate.
Yeah, so we've all been told, this is an assumption I want to talk about. We've all been told that, hey, you should defer your taxation because when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket, paying lower tax rates. I really want to caution you with accepting that assumption. Most of the folks that I'm working with, they're looking at maintaining their lifestyle, or maybe even on the front end of retirement, spending more on things like home renovations or travel. So if we're looking at maintaining our lifestyle, that means roughly spending the same amount of money we're spending during our working years. And I don't know if you've noticed or not, the cost of living, everything that we buy, the cost of living isn't going down. It's been going up substantially, right? So again, don't just accept that your spending is going to be lower in retirement necessarily, and your tax rates will be lower if you're planning on maintaining your lifestyle.
Right. Really good point. Next point. You'll need to ask, when will you need access to those funds?
Right. So in particular, if you've got a portion of your portfolio, if you had the ability to set aside a portion of your portfolio for, let's say, 10 to 15 years that you knew you wouldn't need to touch, those funds might be well suited for a Roth conversion. And here's why. If we assume a 20% tax rate as an example, well, if you get $1 worth of growth on a tax deferred account, you know that it's only going to be worth 80 cents to you when you withdraw it and pay the taxes. If you get $1 worth of growth on a tax exempt account like a Roth, it's going to be worth 100 cents to you. So if we look at something like a typical bucket plan, we might have our more conservative accounts on the front end of that plan. And I'll also typically help folks position taxable and tax deferred accounts oftentimes on the front end of that plan, where we might start drawing down some of those accounts to provide income. And then that third bucket, that more growth-oriented bucket, that's where Roth money becomes really valuable, okay? So we might fund that third bucket, Roth accounts, we might fund those with equities and more growth-oriented accounts because we want the most growth-oriented portion of our plan to grow those 100-cent dollars instead of 80-cent dollars or 70-cent dollars or 85-cent dollars.
Yeah, good point. And then last, when considering a conversion, it comes down to one important question. Do you want to pay the tax on the account, or do you want your beneficiaries to pay the tax? And then you need to ask yourself, what will your beneficiaries' future tax rate be?
Yeah. And I would just remind folks here that, hey, look, this is not just about your estate and your beneficiaries. A lot of retirees themselves, there are cases where they'll benefit during their lifetime of a Roth conversion. But if we want to talk about legacy planning around Roths, I think there are a couple of really important points. First, prior to 2019, if you had a non-spouse beneficiary, like a kid, inherit those accounts, they could stretch that IRA over the course of their lifetime, a traditional tax-deferred IRA, which meant they could take a small required minimum distribution each year based upon their life expectancy. That's no longer the case. With the Secure Act in 2019, now most non-spouse beneficiaries have to distribute that account inside of 10 years. And keep in mind, if we're talking about adult children as beneficiaries, oftentimes those kids are inheriting that account in their 50s and 60s during their peak earning years when their tax liability couldn't be higher. The other thing to keep in mind is if you want those beneficiaries to be able to position those dollars in a Roth for any period of time, understand that they can't do that conversion once it's an inherited account. So if you want those accounts to become a Roth account for the kids, you're going to have to consider doing the conversion yourself.
And another vital bit of information, we are living in a historically low tax rate right now. Many financial experts believe the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 reduced federal income tax rates to the lowest they may ever be. And those cuts are set to expire at the end of 2025.
Right. I can't overstate how big this is. Right. A lot of people look at the change in the tax code and they see that in each of the brackets, they've reduced rates a couple of points. It's really much bigger than that. They've also increased the limits on the low on the lower tax bracket. So what that means is you can make more money today and pay taxes at lower rates on more of that money before moving into the higher tax brackets. So even though they've just reduced rates a couple of points in each bracket, when they've expanded those brackets, here's what it means. For example, if we look at a married couple, we take the same amount of income today versus 2017, that couple, assuming the standard deduction, is paying, if let's say their adjusted gross is anywhere between $50,000 and almost $400,000, they're paying between 25 and 50% less in income taxes on the same amount of income than they were in 2017. And they're going to be paying absent new legislation, 25 to 50% more on the same amount of income in 2026. So I don't know if a Roth conversion is right for everyone. And we don't know for sure if future tax rates are going to be the same, higher or lower. Here's what we do know. Right now, you've got the ability to consider paying some taxes on your own terms at known tax rates, which are far lower than they were in 2017. And that are going to be far lower than they are in 2026, absent new legislation.
Mm-hmm. Now is certainly the right time to consider. And again, just back to the very beginning, with it being Rothtober, it has to be done in the calendar year, right? So a lot of people do them in October and November.
Right, because those custodians are generally going to want that paperwork in by the end of November, 1st of December to get processed.
Great. Well, I'm glad we got to talk this through today, Dustin. Then if somebody has any questions and they want to get a hold of you, how can they reach you?
They can text me a question at 830-476-2505 or reach out on the website to book a free chat at longlivemymoney.com.
Great. Dustin, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.